All right, so again, welcome to our session today about multi-language content. My name is Jamie Cummings with the Training Department at Trivannis. And for today's presentation, what we're going to be focusing on is the use of Lectora's translation tool and multi-language publishing options. Now, with this translation tool, you'll be able to create content in a variety of different languages. And in this session, you're going to learn the tips and tricks that are necessary for seamless integration of translated material into a title. And then after translating your title into multiple languages, you can easily publish courses to all of your desired languages to save time, effort, and also going through that multiple publishing process. Now, with this presentation, I'm going to provide additional information on exporting a title for translation, importing the translated material back into the title, tips and tricks for working with this translated material, and publishing for multi-language content. Throughout the presentation, I will demonstrate the procedures and functionality we are discussing with a real sample title. So let's go ahead and first talk about Lectora's translation tool and what it can actually do for you. So the translation tool that's provided within Lectora is going to allow you to extract text from your title and save it to an RTF file. So all this is a rich text format file. Now with this RTF file, what you can do is edit the file. And you're going to edit with the most word processing applications. So the content of the RTF file can then be translated for importing right back into Lectora. Now the question is, what actually gets translated within your Lectora titles? Well, all text within Lectora is going to be translated, and that's all text within text blocks. Also, text within custom buttons that are created using the button wizard, and also text that's used with that display message action. So as you can see with our example over on the right hand side, we have our before and after option, and this is just showing an English version of the course and then the translated version down below. So you can see how all of your chapter headings, title headings, all of your text blocks will be translated. And we'll get a little bit more into detail with this as we move along. Now, the steps to actually export the text from your title to that RTF file are very simple. So there's 4 main steps to follow. The first step is going to be to actually locate the translation tool, which is found within your toolbar or within your Tools drop-down menu. As soon as you select the translation tool window is going to open. And from here, you're going to have some additional options. Now, if you are exporting the text, you're going to go ahead and select the export text to a translation file. And you have the option to select to include your chapters, section, and page names. So you can check this box so that all names are included for translation. You can also select to include image and button names. And these are going to be used for all of your alt tags to translate all of those image and button names, once again created with that button wizard. Down below, you're going to have the option to determine the scope of the text that will be extracted from the title. So whether it be the entire title or if you're just selecting a chapter, section, or page. Now, as you can see, kind of that last step is just showing you where you're going to be saving your file. And once again, we'll go into more detail about this location. And then you simply click OK, and then it processes that information. So once again, a very user-friendly, very simple process to walk through. Now, what I want to do is actually open up a sample title just to show you how simple this process is. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a folder that I actually already have open out on my desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and open up my sample course. And all I'm doing is accessing that AWT file. Now, as mentioned before, you can locate that translation tool within your toolbar, or you can simply go to your Tools drop-down menu, and it's located there as well. As soon as you select that translation tool option, you're going to notice the first option is just to export the text to a translation file, and then you simply select from the checkboxes that are provided. So if you want to include chapter, section, page names, as well as all of your navigation. And then down below, you also have the option for the scope of the project. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use the entire title. And then last but not least, the translation file is going to be saved to the original folder that you created when you actually set up your Lectora course. So in this case, it's going to default to the location where my AWT file resides. So as soon as I click OK, you're going to see, I already have one out there, but I'm going to go ahead and overwrite that file. But it's a very simple process. It just takes about 1 second to actually create that RTF document for you. So now if I go out to that course folder, I'm going to go ahead and open this up again. You're going to notice here's my boat safety translation. So it's opened up as a Word document, but what I want to do is actually right click on this and select to open with WordPad. Now, I'm going to go back to my overview, and then I'll come back to this RTF file in just a couple seconds, but I just want to give you a little bit more information here. So when you actually go through that process of working with that RTF file, you're going to notice that once again, that RTF file that you just created or that I just created is going to be saved in that same location as your AWT file. Now, one of the biggest things to make note of is underneath step number 1 here, is that when translating this file, make sure to use Notepad or WordPad. Do not use Microsoft Word, because what could happen here is that hidden characters and unwanted symbols can be added to your translated file. And you may not see these until you actually import your content back into Lectora. Now, you're also going to notice within that RTF file that there's going to be different lines of text that are included. And some of these lines you do not want to edit. And these are going to be the text lines that are displayed in red. So you can see kind of a sample here underneath step number 2. And basically what this is going to symbolize for you is that that red text ensures that all proper formatting is going to be retained within the text once it's actually imported back into your title. So once that text changes have been made, the altered RTF file can be imported right back into that original file. Now, one other big tip that I'll give you is always make a copy of your title for each language. So as an example, let's say that you have your English course and maybe you need to create 2 more, one for Spanish, one for French. Well, you want to make sure that you just make a copy so you don't mess up the formatting for each language that you're creating content for. This will just help you stay organized along the way. Now, let me go ahead and access that WordPad document that I just translated out just to kind of show you how this is broken down. So as you can see from this screen, you have all those lines that say do not edit. That's exactly what it means. Everything else can be translated. So this WordPad document is what you would send off to your translator. They would translate the text that they see that's not red. So you can see that you have all your chapter names, all of your buttons, and then all of your kind of body text, if you will, that can be translated. So you have everything available right within this one document. Okay, so let me jump back into here. And then once you actually go through that process of having that RTF file translated, keeping all red formatting lines intact, not using Microsoft Word, you can now go through that process of importing the file back into your title. So once again, it's a good idea to save a copy for each new language you will create. Now, in this particular example, I have already saved a copy of the title. So when I import in my Spanish RTF file, I will then have this boat safety course in both English and Spanish. Now, to actually show you the steps for importing, you're going to notice, once again, a very simple process. So once that RTF file has been translated, once again, using WordPad, Notepad, or a similar text editor, you can select that translation tool again from the Tools menu. Now, step number 2 just consists of selecting to import the text from a translation file. Now, there is an additional option here to select to increase the text box size if needed. So this option will allow you to specify whether or not to basically automatically increase the size of text blocks if the imported text will not fit into the existing text block. Now, if this option is not selected, you may have to manually adjust all of your text block sizes after that translated text has been imported back into your Lectora title. Now, one additional tip that I'll give you is within all of your text properties, you can come in and turn on this option to show vertical scroll bar. Now, what this is going to do for you is not necessarily show a scroll bar within each one of your text blocks, but what it will do is ensure you that all of your translated text will fit in the text block without modifying the page layout. So you could automatically have this turned on if you know you're going to be translating out your content, and in your English course, no one's going to see it. Once it's translated, once again, it's just going to work with modifying that page layout, not affecting it as you place it within your course. So a little tip, but this will go a long way. Now, the third step, once again, pretty simple. You select the scope of the text that you're working with, so chapter, section, page, or the entire title. And then you simply browse to navigate and select the RTF file you are importing. And then once you have that located, click OK. So once again, very simple process. Now, what I want to do is go back into Lectora and import in a translated file. So I'm going to close out of this Notepad, pretend that I've actually translated everything to another language. And from here, I'm going to go to my Tools menu, select that translation tool, but this time I'm going to select to import text from a translation file. And I'm going to go ahead and locate this translated file out on my desktop. As soon as I click Open and click OK, it's going to take a matter of seconds, and then it's going to automatically bring in my translated document from that RTF file. Now you can see in this case, I did have a scroll bar turned on, so I could go into this text block and just resize it if needed, just so I can see all the translated text. But it's not going to mess with any of my formatting throughout my pages. You can also see that over in your Title Explorer, that all the pages have been translated and chapter names, navigation buttons as well. So that was included within the RTF file. Okay, jumping back into our overview, one little thing that I want to point out to you, and this is just another little tip, is that now that your translated RTF file has been imported back into your title, keep in mind that you may want to modify any page layouts as necessary. Now, also remember that the translation tool allows you to translate all text within text blocks, custom buttons, and display message actions. Any graphic that you have contained within your course that has writing on it, and you can see kind of the example on the right-hand side, will need to be updated and replaced manually. So if you have a graphic that says Lobster Bay on it and you need to have that translated, that is something that you will have to do manually and then re-import back in. So just kind of keep that one in mind. Okay, from there, you have to go through and prepare for all of your publishing options. So when you create content within another language, you will want to change the text displayed within maybe your test results window, maybe the generated emails or some program buttons. Where you can actually do this is within the publish strings. So once you open up your preferences that are found within your file drop-down menu, this is where you can locate the publish string options. And this is going to allow you to contain publish strings for automated text. And once again, programming buttons, generated emails. And the reason you want to do this is it is important that you modify the language here as well. Otherwise, the content within your course won't be consistent. So let me actually open up Lectora to show you where this is located. Once again, File drop-down menu, within your preferences, and from here you have your publish string options. Excuse me. Here you can actually import and export an RTF file as well. So it works the same way as your translated files that we just went through. But you can see these are all kind of your results for your test question feedback. And these are the overall results for the test. But you want to make sure that these are translated through that publishing process. Okay, last but not least, we also have the option for multi-language publishing. So when you're actually going through that publishing process, you can upload your RTF translation files during the publishing process and publish your title to multiple languages simultaneously. So here you can actually use the language tab that's available within the publishing options to specify the translation files you want to use to create multiple versions of your content. So what happens here is when you actually publish the HTML, all it's doing is having you locate this folder icon to locate your RTF file to be imported in. So what happens is when you complete that publishing process, your title will be automatically published in its default form and its alternative multi-language forms. So if you have one in English, it's going to automatically publish out to English. And then it's also going to recognize the Spanish and French version of your course and create separate folders for each one. So once again, just to kind of see it firsthand, if I go to my Publish drop-down menu within Lectora, I can simply publish the HTML, and as soon as I do so, here's my Languages tab that I can go out and locate my translation file. So as soon as I click on that folder icon, I can locate this wherever I had it saved originally. And as soon as I select Open and add that, let me go ahead and name this down below. But as soon as I add that, you can see it's going to automatically create another file for me with that translated content. Now, obviously, you can have as many translated files here that you wish. Just keep in mind, it will create those separate folders for you. So as soon as I click OK, it's going to go through that process. And then I can go back out to my folder. And here, you're going to notice that I have, let me go back out here, a boat safety Spanish course, as well as a boat safety translated example for my English course. So I do have two courses here that I can work off of with those translated files. So it's a very simple process to work with. So overall, that's going to be the overview of how to actually work with the translation tool within Lectora. So what I want to do is actually open up the floor to you guys to see if you have any additional questions. So I'm going to jump out to my questions panel. And if you do have questions, I'm going to ask for you to post them out there because once again, everyone is on mute. And I'll just run through these questions and answer them as I go along. One question I had is, Is the translation reliable, or does it need to be confirmed as accurate by a native speaker? Well, this is obviously going to be up to you how you translate your course content, and my recommendation would be is to hire someone, obviously, for the translated content. And it doesn't necessarily have to be by a native speaker, but obviously someone that is familiar with the language itself. What should we do if the translation vendor uses Word in their translation process? Well, always make a copy. That's my only recommendation, because if they use Word, keep in mind those hidden symbols, the text can be reformatted, so just always make an initial copy and tell them up front this has to be translated within WordPad. So I would actually send them the WordPad document instead of the Word document. And here's just some feedback from somebody. This is just an FYI, but they recently encountered an issue with Word 2007, where Notepad or WordPad no longer work the same for a BAT file. So another scenario where you want, special formatting that comes in with Word, what he recommended was using a different editor called EditPad Lite. So IT said there was a font update to Office recently that may have caused this issue. So once again, just another thing to make note of. Another editor out there is called EditPad Lite that you can use to translate. Here's another good question. Will the text blocks resize correctly if their size and position has been locked? If they're locked in place, then no. You're going to manually have to go in, turn off the lock size position option, and resize them accordingly. Why does the Spanish translation have odd line breaks? Are these a holdover from line breaks inserted into the English course? I don't know if you're referring to the one that you just saw within my example, but that's something I'll have to look into, and it could have just been the version of Notepad that I'm on. I'm actually on 2010, so it's something I can definitely look into. What languages does the translation tool come with? Well, keep in mind, it's not giving you the option to translate it to Spanish, French, German, Italian. You are actually just going through that process to export it to that RTF file, and then it's up to you to have a translator translate that content. And it's not just available through Lectora Inspire, it's also available within the publisher. When you publish to multiple languages, do you need to do anything in advance to ensure that the screen layouts don't need to be adjusted? Once again, the one tip that I provided you is just going into each one of your text blocks as you create them and turn on that scroll bar option, and then it shouldn't affect any of your formatting. You may have to readjust some of the text blocks once it has been imported back in, but that should not move or readjust anything within your content area. Does this multiple language publishing work if the content has been translated to non-European languages? For example, Arabic, Japanese, and Chinese. Once again, another great question, and I'll actually give you a tip on this one that I just spoke with a client about. If you're working with Japanese, what I've been told is to avoid large fonts and also to use 1.5 spacing. So if you do have additional questions about this one, I'll give you my contact information at the end of this. We can follow up. But once again, just avoid large fonts with, the non-European languages, and then also use 1.5 spacing. Does the language tool only work for HTML, or does it work for AICC and SCORM? It will work for AICC and SCORM content because technically you are publishing the HTML, and you'll have that same tab within that publishing process. I always get this question, what happens if you have white text in your course? Well, that's something that you have to be very cautious of. So what I would recommend before you actually go through this exporting process, to actually leave notes to yourself throughout your course stating that you want to change that content to white font once it has been translated and pulled back in. Initially, obviously, you do not want to export that text out with white font. I have another question that someone has had issues when translating titles of pages, and accent will cause the program to stop functioning. Would you recommend not translating the titles, or is there a way to deal with accents and special characters? For this individual, I'm going to actually give you my contact information. If you could actually send me a sample of this, I would appreciate it, and we can look into it further. So I went ahead and sent you my contact information. How many different languages are available for translation? Once again, you guys are the ones translating your files. Lectora is not translating it for you. It's just giving you that RTF file. Do you have the translation house also translate the buttons and navigational elements? Absolutely. If it was created using Lectora's button wizard, you want to make sure that you have those translated. So when you go through that export process, keep in mind there's an option to say include all buttons, and then those will be translated within the RTF file. So yes, that is correct. Lectora does not translate the content, but export it back into the title using the RTF file. So once again, for the individual that asked me this question, in regards to translation tools out online, I'm going to look into this. We always hire out to have our content translated, but I can see if I have any recommendations that I can gather for you. So if you want to shoot me an email with that question, I would appreciate it. And yes, you will need a separate title for each language that you're translated. So keep that going. All right, I'm just going through this list. I've got a couple more here. Some of these are repeated questions. Is the translation tool an add-in to Lectora? Nope. It's always available within that tools drop-down menu, depending on the version of Lectora that you're in, but it should be in Lectora Inspire and Lectora Publisher. And one recommendation from a client, they said when they actually had white font built within their course content, that their translator actually just changed the background of the document that they were working in, and then they translated it and then just imported it back in. So that way you don't have to worry about changing your font color back in Lectora. Does the fonts used in the course matter? That's something you have to be careful of, and depending on the language that you are going to be translating to, once again, just kind of going back to Japanese language, they say to avoid large fonts. So I would just keep it simple, and I actually recommend this in all English courses as well. So keep it, as your well-known fonts between size 10 and 12. Don't get too crazy with the body font, and then you should be good to go. Okay, so with all this said, what I'm going to do is go ahead and wrap up here. If for some reason I did not get to your question, I do apologize, but I'm going to go ahead and place my contact information actually within Lectora here. Let me open up this course just so you have it. So if you guys do have any additional questions in regards to the translation tool, please feel free to contact me at cummings@trivanisdev.com. And my first name is Jamie. You can send me any additional questions that you may have. Please feel free to contact me. Besides that, I do want to go ahead and wrap up for today's webinar. So I want to thank you guys for your time. And if you do have additional questions, you can also contact us here at Trivanus. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you.